Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. In this weekly series, I bring you my top transfer targets ahead of the upcoming game week. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, let's jump into today's video. So guys, we're actually starting with a double West Ham comparison, and the two players that I'll be comparing here are Jarrod Bowen and Pablo Fornals. Antonio is, of course, a fantastic option. You also have some budget gems in the defence as well. But for the purpose of this video, I think a lot of us are eyeing up that midfield spot, maybe to replace the likes of Brian Mbeumo or Smith Rowe if he is out a little bit long with the injury. Arsenal are playing tonight, so I don't actually know the extent of the injury at this time, but I think a lot of us will be looking to move around those midfield spots a little bit. So we'll be comparing Jarrod Bowen and Pablo Fornals here. Now, the first thing to note, of course, as is often the case in these battle stats, there is a bit of a price difference here. And at this stage in the season, maybe it's just me and myself, but I am noticing that something like 0.4 million can make all the difference, even less than that sometimes. And I've been playing around with my squad over the upcoming weeks, and I'm really struggling to get to Bowen, whereas I can get to Fornals. So the first thing to note is that price difference. I suppose the question, therefore, is the price different? Like, is it warranted? Is it worth playing the extra 0.4 for Jarrod Bowen? Fixtures-wise, they are really, really great. And on pretty much any algorithm you look at, even the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm, it will put the West Ham as one of the best attacking fixtures over the next 6 to 10 game weeks. So I do think that you definitely want a West Ham attacker in your team, potentially 2. Potentially 3. We had the Benrahma and Antonio double up at the start of the season that worked really well. I've got a feeling Bowen and Antonio, or perhaps even Bowen and Fornals, would be a great double up. The triple up might be one step too far, but West Ham are a free scoring team. The fixtures are good. It could be a great option, especially at the cutthroat price of 6.4 and 6 million. Burnley, Arsenal, Norwich, Southampton, Watford and Palace, 6 really nice fixtures. I know the Arsenal defence isn't always fantastic, but I do think if you're not bringing them in this week, you could potentially wait till game week 18. But I do really like the Burnley fixture in game week 16, so I'd definitely be looking to jump on. If we take a look at the underlying statistics, I've just noticed there's an issue with the stats, the graphic stats, but I've accidentally overwritten the file, so I can't now change that. But all of Bowen's stats are the better stats. They should be in green. So Bowen comes out on every single online statistic higher than Pablo Fornals, which is definitely interesting. Probably suggests that it might be worth paying the 0.4 million. But yeah, it should be green for Bowen and white for Fornals. Total minutes played, they're both essentially nailed. They've both played almost every minute available this season. Jarrod Bowen, I believe, has only been benched once or twice. Once was obviously quite recently against Manchester City, but that was because they switched to a 5-back. What I like about Jarrod Bowen is he is first choice in their starting 11, but when Antonio isn't fit, either due to injury, illness, whatever it is, or due to fatigue, if he is rested, and he will be rested in this busy period at some point, you would assume, Jarrod Bowen is probably their second choice striker. So not only is he their first choice right winger, he can also play up front as well when Antonio is not in the team. So I really like Jarrod Bowen for that reason. The reason I like Pablo Fornals is he can play on the left wing or he can play centrally. So both of these two players are probably first choice left winger and first choice right winger, but Pablo Fornals can play centrally as well if Benrahma plays on the left, and Jarrod Bowen can play up top if Antonio is not fit or if he's being rested. So both of them quite versatile, and that only adds they've only got more string to their bow as a result. Projected points wise, Bowen does come out on top. As we've said, he comes out on top on every single thing here. 24.1 is actually pretty decent for a 6.4 million pound midfielder, but as you can see, Pablo Fornals at 20.5 isn't bad either. Expected FPL points wise, they are fairly similar. Neither really blow you away, but at that sort of price, that's what you would expect, really. None of them are really outperforming their price massively, and I would say the same therefore goes for their non-penalty expected goals and expected assists. Bowen does come out on top at 0.46, which is really, really good, but not mind-blowing. And then 0.38 for Pablo Fornals, again, is okay, nothing to write home about. But it's quite consistent for the two of them. They perform pretty consistently across the entire season at this sort of rate. And at that sort of price range, there aren't that many better players. Obviously, we had the likes of Gallagher early on in the season who was performing at about a 0.8 non-penalty expected goal involvement, which just isn't really sustainable for players of this quality and players of this price. But nonetheless, really, really impressive from both and fairly similar as well. So you would say, yes, Bowen is coming out on top in a lot of these underlying statistics, but he's not necessarily destroying Fornals in any of them. Big chances wise, Bowen does come out on top again, 0.59 big chances, which means he's getting at least one big chance every 2 games, roughly, Jared Bowen, whereas Pablo Fornals is a 0.38, so he's getting a big chance every 3 games-ish. Not that much of a difference again, but across the season, if you're owning these over a longer period, you would expect Jared Bowen to get more big chances. And the only real stark contrast between the two, where you would say, yes, Jared Bowen definitely comes out on top, is touches in the box. Pablo Fornals is actually only getting 2.66 touches in the box per 90, which is really, really poor. There's a lot of fullbacks. I'm talking like 15, 20 plus fullbacks in the league that are getting more touches in the box than Pablo Fornals. So that is slightly worrying for me. 5.13 for Bowen is very, very good, but it's not even that impressive, which probably suggests to you that Pablo Fornals' 2.66 really isn't very good. If you take a look at the touch maps, you can see that a lot of Fornals' touches are on that left wing, as we've said. He does come centrally a little bit, but when he does come centrally, he's not making those darting runs into the box. Whereas a lot of Bowen's is almost like a slightly worse version of Salah. So slightly fewer touches in the box than Salah you would have. Well, obviously Salah's getting 9 or 10 touches in the box, but that sort of general sticks quite wide right, but does like to come into the box. The likes of Mahrez as well is another good player to compare him to. So overall, Jared Bowen is definitely coming out on top. The underlying statistics are better. The touch map looks better. I would say even when you watch them, Jared Bowen definitely looks the more involved in the action. But it's not a massive difference between the two. So I guess what I would say is if you can stretch to Bowen, Bowen is definitely the one to own for me. Not only because his underlying statistics are better, but like I said, if anything does happen to Antonio, and we really hope it doesn't because that does affect West Ham's attack, Jared Bowen would probably fill in up top. And the stats are better, but Pablo Fornals is definitely comparable. So if you can only get to Fornals, I wouldn't see that as a massive downgrade. That's just my opinion on it. Let me know down below. Are you trying to bring in Bowen or Fornals this week? If you are bringing in one, who are you bringing in? I definitely think Fornals is going under the radar, but I think Bowen is correctly getting the majority of the attention because his underlying statistics are better. Now, this is a discussion that we've had 2 or 3 times over the sort of past month or so on this channel, and I've discussed it on my own channel as well. But I do think it's going to continue to be a point of discussion, at least for the next week or two, because a lot of us still don't own Dennis and King, and they are proving to be excellent, excellent value for money, even better than excellent. They're both in the top scoring forwards in the game. Dennis in particular has performed so well with respect to actual FPL returns and FPL points. So it's worth considering. Dennis has now risen in price to 5.6 million at the time of recording, which is Monday night. But it looks like he could be getting a price rise tonight. So now it's no longer the case of do you go slightly cheaper for Dennis, because they're pretty much the same price. And if Dennis does increase in price tonight or tomorrow, they are both going to be 5.7 million. So do you go for Dennis or do you go for King? I would like to caveat if I think I'm going to potentially be biased one way or the other and say that at the moment, I'm looking at bringing in Josh King. However, I'll try and explain the reasoning for that, because obviously I've got this decision this week as well. I'm looking to bring in one of these guys. And like I said, for the last few weeks, and still is the case, I am still leaning toward Josh King. If we take a look at their ownership, obviously, because Dennis has been getting a lot more FPL returns and a lot of the more casual managers, and this isn't really an issue, they're not looking at underlying statistics. They're looking at Emmanuel Dennis is scoring lots of goals, getting assists, getting FPL points. I'm going to bring him in. And he was cheaper than King until obviously tonight or tomorrow. But King is the slightly more differential pick. So if you do make picks based on ownership, you might want to go for King for that reason. The fixtures are great, as we've just discussed in the West Ham section. Watford do rank towards the top for fixtures with respect to underlying statistics of the defences they're facing. Brentford, Burnley, Palace, Wolves, West Ham, Tottenham. They're not incredible fixtures, but all of them you would fancy Watford to score, especially in the form they're in. Ranieri has turned them into absolute attacking machines. They're getting goals. Their underlying stats as a team is actually pretty good as well. We're not talking top of the league by any means, but they're getting enough chances. And at this price, you can almost bench and rotate these Watford boys. You don't even need to start them every week. And I will say, I have seen quite a few people tempted to go for the double up. I don't mind that at all. You could potentially go for like Antonio, Dennis, King, and you could have a stacked midfield of Son, Salah, Foden, Jota, Bernardo Silva. You could really pump money into that midfield and the defence if you go for the likes of Antonio, Dennis, King. Or you could even go for like a Ronaldo or a Lukaku plus 2 cheaper strikers. My only issue with having both is that in the weeks where you don't want to play them because the fixture's quite difficult, you've got to probably play one unless you're playing a 4-5-1. And even so, you then got them on the bench. So I don't tend to like to double up on a team that I don't fancy score a lot of goals. The reason I said that you could double up on Bowen and Fornals is West Ham are a significantly better team than Watford. Even though Watford have been paying quite well recently, I fancy West Ham to get quite a few goals in every game. Where I'm not sure long term, at least, maybe short term, but long term, I'd expect Watford to continue at the rate they are. All that being said, fixtures are really good, so I would look to bring them in sooner rather than later. I wouldn't keep waiting because the fixtures do start to turn after this nice period. Underlying stats wise, there is a clear winner. And as I said, I'm looking to bring in Josh King. And the reason for that is that he is coming out on top on most underlying statistics. Minutes played, Dennis has played slightly more minutes, but since they've both been in the team, they are fairly nailed. I'm not expecting either of them to miss out too much. The AFCON news for Dennis is really strange. Lots of places are reporting that he's still not in a good relationship with the coach and therefore he won't be going. Some places are now reporting that he is indeed going to be in the squad. So I haven't seen any concrete news. If you have, let me know down below. But at the time of recording this, I haven't seen anything concrete. So Dennis could potentially be going off to AFCON. Other than that, I can't see any reason why Josh King or Dennis would be rotated. Even with João Pedro coming back, I still think he's got to start Dennis and King. It might just mean they come off slightly earlier, one of them, for João Pedro. Projected points-wise, because his stats have been better, King is coming out on top. And of course, he is on penalties as well. So the algorithm will take that into account. And the fact that he's on penalties is probably only going to add to his potential expected points over the upcoming game weeks. Expected FPL points from the first 15 game weeks, King does come out on top as well. The penalty obviously boosted that slightly, but other than that, he still does have better underlying statistics across most of the different metrics. The real stark contrast, and this is quite a big difference between the two, especially now they're roughly the same price, is the non-penalty expected goal involvement is 0.47 for Dennis, which if you compare that to Pablo Fornals and Bowen, it's better than both of them. It's pretty much the same as Bowen, better than Fornals. So it's still very, very impressive. But Josh King's is 0.66, and this is without penalties. So without penalties, 0.66. If you put penalties into the equation, Josh King's pushing a 0.7, 0.75 expected goal involvement per 90. Those are elite stats. That's what you'd expect from an 8, 9, 10 million pound striker. Potentially even a premium play. He's outperforming a lot of premiums this season. So it's not necessarily that Dennis is bad. It's more so that Josh King's stats are really, really good. Big chances per 90, huge difference. Dennis is only getting 0.25 big chances per 90, which equates to one big chance every 4 games. Josh King is getting 0.9 big chances per 90, which equates to almost a big chance every game. So that is a real big difference. In the time that Dennis is getting 4 big chances, Josh King could be having 12, 16 big chances in that time. So there is quite a big difference between the two there. And that would make me lean towards Josh King. As I've said a lot on this channel in the past, you want your strikers and the players that you're bringing in to be getting those clear-cut opportunities because they won't continue to score those low XG opportunities forever unless they're an elite finisher like someone like Heung-min Son. Touches in the box, remarkably, both are 5.23. I've never known it be exactly the same over such a long period with different minutes, but they're both getting exactly the same amount of touches in the box. So with respect to actual involvement inside the box, they're very similar, but Josh King is clearly getting more of those big chances, those one-on-ones. Obviously, the penalty counts as a big chance as well. So yeah, Josh King is coming out on top. And I think if Emmanuel Dennis was still like 5.2 million, as he was earlier, like literally only a couple of weeks ago, if he was still 5.2, I'd say there's maybe a conversation to be had that I might go for Dennis to save the money, similar to how we just said with Bowen and Fornals. But now that Dennis is 5.6, going to be 5.7 either tonight or tomorrow, I would say that I do think Josh King is the stallion in my opinion. And you know he's not going to AFCON. That's my opinion on it. What I would say, as I said before, is I don't mind the double up as long as you're willing to accept that in those weeks where Watford have a tough fixture, you're probably not going to want either of them. And as long as you're using the money to really bolster that midfield, or you're using it to get 2 premiums and you feel like you're using that money for a reason. Other than that, I think it might be better to go for like a Ronaldo, Antonio and King. And at least then you've got 3 different price points in your team. Let me know down below. Have you already got one of Dennis and King? Are you potentially looking at a double up? And if not, who are you looking to bring in? Like I said, this week, I think I'll be bringing in Josh King rather than Emmanuel Dennis. As you know, I like to try and chuck a few curveballs in there in these videos. I could be suggesting the likes of, and these are good options, Bernardo Silva, Foden, Ronaldo, etc. for the upcoming game weeks. Of course, they're brilliant options as well, but I like to chuck a couple of interesting ones in there. And I suppose Ben Davies is being brought in by a lot of managers, so he's not necessarily the biggest differential in the world, although he is still only 0.7% owned at the time of recording. But Diogo Dalot is probably one that a couple of you have considered, but probably isn't going to be widely discussed this week with respect to FPL content creators. But I think these potentially could be, not necessarily now for Dalot, but over the upcoming game weeks, I do think that these could be 2 of the best 4.4, 4.5 million pound defenders in the game. You do also have Lamptey, and let me just say Lamptey is putting up elite underlying statistics for a defender. Really good. My issue with Lamptey is Graham Potter has said on numerous occasions he needs to be managed over the Christmas period. He's a very effective sub. And I think that almost harms him slightly in that he can be used so effectively from the bench. I do expect him to start more games than he's going to miss out, but I'm not necessarily sure that I would trust him over the busy period. I potentially, and Brighton fixtures aren't that great as well. I'd potentially look to be bringing him in maybe after the Christmas period, around end of January, beginning of February. But he is a great option as well. You've also got the Crystal Palace defenders. But I just thought I'd discuss these two because they're both in technically like top 6 teams or traditional top 6 teams. I'm not saying they're definitely top 6 now, but they're both in teams that we know perform well. We've got Rangnick and Conte now. We've got 2 managers that know how to tighten the ship at the back. And I've just got a feeling both of these could be really, really great value over the upcoming game weeks. Both 4.4 million as well, so you're saving money on the 4.5 million pound defenders. Dalot is more of an eye test. Now, I'm a Manchester United fan, and let me make it clear, I am not biased towards Diogo Dalot. In fact, I don't really like him as a footballer. In the past, I've really struggled to get behind him. I think he's really, really error prone, and he struggled to demonstrate fitness on a consistent basis as well, and consistent performances. So I'm not biased towards him by any means. However, since the Rangnick news broke, since Aaron Wan-Bissaka has been unavailable and Dalot's come in, he has probably been the best player in our team, potentially alongside Fred, which is really, really interesting as well. 2 players that really weren't very good under Ollie. I don't know for sure that he's going to lock down that right-back role. In fact, Aaron Wan-Bissaka obviously costing us quite a bit of money. Being a relatively good one-on-one defender, he could potentially rotate with Dalot. What I would say is I've done a lot of research on Rangnick because I'm just very interested as a fan. And he likes to play with technically able fullbacks. And Diogo Dalot is that. I can't imagine that he's going to look at Aaron Wan-Bissaka in training and think, I really want you as my starting right-back. He's just so poor on the ball. And like I said, Dalot's not even demonstrated any... I mean, it's only been a couple of games, but he's demonstrated that he just looks a little bit more mature on the ball. He's making better decisions. He's whipped in a couple of really, really good crosses as well. So this is more of a gut feeling eye test call, which isn't something I usually do on this channel because we're very stats focused. But I've just got a feeling, so I've just chucked him in there. Fixtures-wise, we know how good Manchester United's fixtures are. That's why people are looking at Sancho, Rashford and Ronaldo. Norwich, Brentford, Brighton, Newcastle, Burnley, Wolves. From a defensive point of view, they're even better than from an offensive point of view. Norwich, Brighton, Burnley and Wolves in particular struggling to get goals. Even their expected data is not very good. And even Brentford and Newcastle can be very, very hit and miss. So I really fancy the next 6 from a defensive point of view. And even in that first game against Palace, Rangnick just looked like he controlled the game a little bit better than we've seen under Ollie and even under Carrick. The game just looked a little bit more under control with respect to their defensive performance. Ben Davies, on the other hand, I think Conte's finally starting to get through to that Tottenham side. I do think it will take time as well. But they just look a little bit better. And Davies is playing almost like an overlapping fullback role. I don't know how long you guys watch football, but if you know how good Sheffield United were in the season when they finished, what was it, 6th, 7th, 8th, something like that. The overlapping centre-backs, those bombing runs, even Rudiger does it now for Tuchel. Conte seems to have got that going with Ben Davies, and he is bombing forward a lot from that left centre-back role. Up for corners as well. He's just looked a real goal threat, and we'll see that in the underlying statistics as well. Fixtures-wise, listen, they're not fantastic, but I don't necessarily think they're as bad as you see at first glance. And long-term, I just think you don't mind holding a defender with average-ish fixtures when they're playing for a team that's starting to defend slightly better, and they're very cheap. Brighton, Leicester, 2 decent fixtures. Neither of those teams have been fantastic, although Leicester have been good from an attacking perspective. Liverpool's not great, but then I really don't mind Crystal Palace, Southampton and Watford. I could see 1, maybe 2 clean sheets in that set of 3 games there. So I think you're bringing in Ben Davies long term. You're not bringing him in to get those immediate gains, whereas someone like Dalot might be better in the short term. Underlying stats wise, Dalot's stats, as I said, they're not really fantastic, although he has only played 271 minutes. Projected points wise, this hasn't caught up from Aaron Wan-Bissaka missing out. So Aaron Wan-Bissaka is still in the predicted lineup for the Manchester United teams. The fixed algorithm hasn't quite up with that. So Dalot's only predicted to get 5.7 points over the next 6 game weeks. By the way, that should say game week 16 to game week 21. I do apologise. Davies, 18.4 points over the next 6 game weeks, which isn't that great, and it's likely because the fixtures aren't fantastic. He's predicted to get then around 3 points per game week, which, like I said, isn't great, but you're probably bringing him for the long term. Non-penalty expected goals and expected assists, 0.07 isn't terrible for Dalot, but that just backs up the fact that his underlying statistics haven't caught up to the fact that he is starting to look quite good under Rangnick and in this new era. 0.32 for Ben Davies, though, is very, very good considering he's playing centre-back, although a couple of his earlier games did come at left-back. So you can see that, therefore, it might be slightly skewed. However, in the last 2 or 3 game weeks, his underlying statistics have actually been slightly better, especially his expected goals. So that is very, very impressive for a left centre-back to have those sort of underlying statistics. I do think that will regress slightly, and I don't think it will stay that high. But it does show you that despite him being cheap, despite him playing at centre-back, he is still getting forward quite a bit. Big chances, he's actually had 0.3 big chances per 90. That is likely due to having a huge big chance. I think he's had 1 or 2 big chances, and obviously that skews it under a short sample size. And then touches in the box is the only thing Dalot does come out on top in. And I do think that over a longer period, Dalot will continue to have quite a few touch in the boxes, and Ben Davies, I do think, will drop off slightly. But it does show that even in only a few minutes, Dalot's still getting quite a few touch in the box, which could be very, very promising. Let me know down below. What cheap defenders, apologies, are you lining up? I know the Livramento bandwagon is slowly dying. Southampton don't look as great defensively and the fixtures aren't fantastic. I know Lamptey is very popular. Are you looking at Dalot or Davies, or have you spotted someone else? There are lots of good budget defenders, but I've just got a sneaky suspicion one or both of these could be really, really good value over the next 6 game weeks. So guys, there you have it. Those are my top transfer targets ahead of game week 16. 2 forwards, 2 midfielders, 2 defenders as well. Let me know down below. Are you looking to bring in any of those 6 players, or have you got someone else on your watch list? As I said, there are some really good, potentially more obvious picks. The likes of Bernardo Silva, I think, would be high up on my priority list. If you don't own Diogo Jota, another great option. Ronaldo could be a very, very good punt if you're looking to move off of Kane. So there are lots of other good options, but for me, I like to have a bit of a combination of some cheaper players and some differentials as well. So I'm not always recommending the same obvious players. If you're enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It does really go a long way, helps to support the channel, and obviously it's free for you guys. And if you want to try out any of the features that you can see present in these videos, the fixture analyzer, the heat maps, the different underlying statistics, projected points, whatever it may be that I've used in these videos, you could do so by heading over to fantasyfootballfix.com. Definitely go do that. There are so many useful features. This is only the tip of the iceberg that I use in these videos. There are so many more aspects and features that you can get over on the website. Thank you so much for watching. We really do appreciate the support. Until next time, guys, cheers. Bye-bye.